Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Signal Hour. Of course, this is where we're pulling out the signal from the noise, trying to help you stay abreast of what's going on. I know it's hard. It's hard these days because, we have all kinds of misinformation, malinformation, disinformation out there, but of course, not coming from yours truly. It's coming from the, well, mainstream media. So today we're going to talk about three things. We got, let's look at it here. We've got the food wars. What's going on with the food wars? A lot to talk about. You saw Dr. Ken Berry there. We're bringing him on in just a second. We got maybe a little bit about the drones, this continuing resolution. It's just is, if you think it was bad watching sausage get made, this is like watching sausage get made out of roadkill. It's awful. We'll go into that in just a second. And then we've got a few reader questions and comments. Of course, this is live. So any questions you have, I'm monitoring the chat over here on the side. We're in StreamYard. Great software for this. And so what I'm going to do now is we're just going to turn now to the first part of this episode, which we're going to talk about food and food wars and things like that. So Ken, Dr. Ken Berry, so good to see you here. Great to have you on the show.
Good to be back with you, Chris. Let's tell it like it is.
Well, let's do that. So for people who may not be familiar with you, and I think there's probably only one left in the universe, for that person, just your background, who you are, and how it is that we came to get to know each other here on this topic.
Yeah, so I'm a family physician. I've been practicing family medicine for 22 years. I was classically trained at a state university in allopathic medicine. Early in my medical career, I became severely obese and pre-diabetic. And in my own personal journey to reverse my severe obesity and prediabetes, I have uncovered, I'm not the first to uncover these, but personally, I uncovered what I consider to be the principles of a proper human diet. I use that to completely reverse all of my medical problems. And now at the ripe old age of 56, I feel better than I did when I was 35. And I had started a social media outlet at the urging of my wife, the nagging of my wife, Nisha, to get this message out to other people. And so I still practice medicine part-time, but my full-time job is reaching out to people on social media and helping them understand that 80 to 85% of their problems medically are caused by their diet, and the simple steps that you can use to reverse your chronic medical conditions by changing your diet.
Well, this is such a big thing. As cynical as I am, Ken, I couldn't keep up with this. I have fallen down one rabbit hole after another. I know this is your space. I'm late to the game, but every single thing I uncover, and we'll go through just one of them today. So looking at, there's multiple dimensions, right? So you have A, it's just ultra processed foods and all that entails. B, they've hit the bliss point, sugar, fat, salt, a lot of sugar. Sugar has its own story. But then there's the preservatives. That's another story. And then there's just this like meaningless stuff like dyes. We just put chemical dyes in our food, like totally unnecessarily. I want to talk about that, one of those rabbit holes. Point is, our food is engineered to make us sick.
Yes.
Have I overstated that?
No. I think you stated that perfectly. Here's what's going on. The big multinational, multi-billion-dollar food corporations, and there's 10 of them that own virtually every food company that sells food to humans. They employ chemical engineers, biological engineers, and they have discovered this thing called a bliss point. And this has been known about by doctors who care to look into this. It's been known for a decade or two that there is such a bliss point. So what does that mean? So in the human body, you have hormones that tell you when you're hungry. You also have another set of hormones to tell you, hey, dummy, you're full. You've eaten enough. It's time to stop eating. What the food companies have done with their chemical engineers and their chemically engineered food or food-like products is they have discovered how to hack your hormones. They've discovered how to make you eat, even though your satiety signals are saying to you, hey, dummy, you've eaten enough food, stop eating. They've overwhelmed those hormonal messages. Now, let's keep in mind, those hormonal satiety messages have worked for human beings for millions of years. Okay, that's why when you look at the anthropological record, You don't see obesity. There's one incidence that we see in anthropology of humans becoming obese and having visceral adiposity, fat around their belly and their internal organs. And we can talk about that because I think it's very revealing. So Kellogg's, Kraft Heinz, Mondelez, Nestle, Danone, Post, General Mills, these companies employ scientists to hack your hormones. And they've done a brilliant job of it. They've done very good, and it's paid handsomely to their shareholders and their boards of directors. But who has it harmed? Well, it's harmed the American consumer because we've been programmed through lots of advertising with Tony the Tiger and remember the little guys on the Rice Krispies commercial? We've been programmed subconsciously to trust these companies, though they're our friends. Tony the Tiger, the little three guys, Snap, Crackle, Pop. We've been programmed to trust them, and they have abused that trust, the trust that they gained subliminally, basically, unconsciously, through their repetitive advertising that they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on. We trust them, and so we buy what we think is food at the supermarket. But my definition of food and Kellogg's definition of food and probably the average viewer's definition of food is not the same. In my definition, food provides nourishment. It does not cause inflammation. It does not lead to chronic disease. Real food, when you're hungry, you eat it. And when your satiety signals give you the signal, hey, you've eaten enough, you stop eating real food. And then you go outside and play. You go back to work. You go back to doing what you enjoy. But these food companies have hacked your bliss point so that even though all of your satiety hormones are saying, hey, stop eating, you're gonna harm yourself, they have engineered this bliss point so that you can't eat just one. You have to keep eating. You unconsciously keep eating. You keep snacking all day long. You wind up eating 6 meals a day with snacks in between. That's great for the big food companies' profit, but it's disastrous for your health.
We've got to talk about more of that. And you have some fans here, of course. Frank saying, just take my chicken livers, Ken. Okay.
Huzzah.
Cat Snats video saying, having a steak. How we doing so far?
This is the way. Yes.
Well, this is good. So I want to can we talk about this for just a second, because we have this going on, which is this just came out. So this is the signal. We just had this cooking oils, they said, now in a peer-reviewed study has been linked to colon cancer, tied to inflammation, but they say cooking oils, Ken, as if we could lump tallow in there. What are they really talking about here?
So what they're really talking about is vegetable seed oils that are very high in linoleic acid, very high in omega-6 fatty acids. This is another example of big food saying, man, it would be so much cheaper and easier and would increase the shelf life of our food-like products if we, instead of using tallow or butter or lard, if we used soybean oil, canola oil, peanut oil, safflower, sunflower. If we use one of these oils, we can get them super cheap because the government subsidizes the growing of soybeans and canola and corn oil and corn, right? That we effectively can get these ingredients for free. They make the product very shelf stable, so it can sit in the warehouse for 6 months and then be on a transport ship for a few weeks, and then sit on the supermarket shelf for another 6 months and still taste and feel fresh, right? And so that, of course, any corporation is going to incorporate that. And here's the problem with the vegetable seed oils. There is zero long-term data, research that has been done on these showing that they are safe for constant consumption and long-term consumption. There's just no data showing that. But so some of these things, like cottonseed oil, was introduced into the human food supply about 100 years ago. Soybean oil several decades ago. Corn oil, canola oil, peanut oil several decades ago. So if you go back in time just 100 years, nobody, not a single human on planet Earth, was eating these vegetable seed oils in any quantity, right? They might occasionally eat some of this stuff, but so you can't take corn and put it in a press. You can't stomp on it and oil comes out. You can't take rape seeds and stomp on them or put them in a press and get oil out. If you try to do that with an industrial press, the canola oil smells awful. It's gray and muddy and smells terrible. No human would eat it. It has to then go to a chemical factory where it's treated with hexane and a bunch of other chemical processes to make it that beautiful golden clear oil that you see in the vegetable oil container, or to make plant butter with it, or to make any of the thousands of other products, not food, but products that they make with this. And then comes the advertising to trick you into thinking, oh, it must be healthy. Look at that beautiful golden oil. That I think I'll cook with that. This is never, ever something that humans have eaten in the past. And I don't believe it's something that humans should be eating right now. I think we should all very, very much limit or eliminate vegetable seed oils from our diet.
Well, let's I want to take a look at this really quick then. So this is the indictment of all indictments to me, and it's life expectancy across a variety of industrialized countries, including the US there in that dismal red arc over there, but against health expenditure. So leaving aside the whole story around health expenditures, just look at how far behind the United States is every other industrialized country. It's not like, there's a few outliers and we're sort of in like the bad pack. Like everybody else has sprinted down. They've all crossed the 100-yard finish line, and we're like at still at the 70-yard mark, wheezing. It's awful. Ken, shouldn't this alone be some sort of a I don't know, a wake-up call of some kind here? I'm a little, I don't know how else to interpret that.
Absolutely. Every American who looks at that, I don't know if you could put that up while I'm talking about it so we can just look at it. Every American who looks at this should be furious. Now, the causes of this curve that you're seeing here on this life expectancy versus health expenditure, this is multifactorial. There are multiple reasons for this. Now, first of all, the fake food that we're eating is contributing to this. The vegetable seed oils, the just sugar in everything. That's contributing. Absolutely. It's a big part of this curve. But also, what about all the artificial dyes that they effectively come as a byproduct of petroleum manufacturing, of making oil and gasoline and lubricants? They have these leftover things that they're like, hey, we can make Fruit Loops and Lucky Charms really this vibrant red or orange or blue. Real food doesn't come in those colors. And you would expect the average consumer to just use common sense and go, wow, that's almost glow in the dark. That can't be healthy. But we've been trained again unconsciously by the food companies that they're our friends. And so we should be able to eat this stuff. It should be fine. But also, this is an indictment of U.S. medical health care. Right? The medications that we've been told by multiple television and magazine commercials and ads, this is going to help you be healthier. This is going to save you effectively is what the message is. Obviously, they're not doing anything to help us long term. Our life expectancy based, when you compare it to any other modern society, is sad. It's terrible. It's atrocious. And we've got to, and that's why I'm hopeful that our new administration, if they do the things that they promised us they will do, they will address this, all the factors in that curve. That just it's depressing to look at that curve and go, wow, we are the leading country in so many fields, but when it comes to being healthy and when it comes to longevity, what are we, number 35 or number 40 out of the developed countries? I mean, that's terrible.
It's not just terrible. I think it's immoral. And so, Ken, very interesting period of time here. Oddly, I've up to this point, up until this election, I have known exactly 0 people who work in government. And this time I might know 30 or 40, including one step removed or very close to some big players like RFK, Jay Bhattacharya, et cetera. So it's a whole new kind of a landscape to understand that we might be able to do something this time, but they are going to do everything in their power. By they, I mean corporations. It's profits. There are people who are going to try and defend profits. But in doing that, I can't help but see it as a sick care triangle anymore, Ken. Obviously, you've got players out there who feed bad toxic substances, and there's many dimensions to that then lead to people having chronic illnesses. So the kids need ADHD meds, which turns out red dye number 3 and yellow 40 might be contributing to that ADHD. So feed them ADHD stuff and then treat the ADHD symptoms. Obviously not good for the kids, but good for corporations. To that end, I know you battle with this all the time. People's eating habits are set in childhood. I would like to maybe get your reaction to this. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I'm just going to play this. This is a feel-good moment. I think a school got together, and I don't know what they're going to do with all these boxes, but just take a look at, kids were asked to bring in breakfast items. Take a look at this. Ken, what's in those boxes?
Junk. That's not real food in those boxes.
I mean, I'm just seeing sugar, preservatives.
Yep.
Maybe
sugar,
glyphosate,
grains, vegetable seed oils, and petroleum-derived food coloring. That's literally all that's in those boxes. There's no real human food in any of those boxes. Even the most expensive cereal that you can buy at the supermarket, the most expensive one that's organic and non-GMO, contains sugar, grains, and vegetable seed oils, plus or minus the artificial dyes. There is no food. That's not food. That's what I call poverty food. If you're starving to death, yes, eat all the cereal to keep from starving and dying. But if you're trying to optimize your health, there's no optimal food in those boxes whatsoever.
Yeah, look, it just keeps going and going and going. And Ken, I feel bad. I ate this stuff as a kid. I fed it to my own kids, but now that I know what I know, I would never do this. I don't see food anymore.
No, we don't have a single box of any of that in our house, Chris. Our 5-year-old and our 2-year-old don't even know the different brands of cereal. They have no idea what that is because we are creating a new culture in our household, a new family heritage in our family.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that because that's actually an evolutionary principle that people need to understand. What's going on? Why are so many people eating Lucky Charms and feeding that to their kids? There's really 3 things going on. There's the unconscious belief that these food companies are our friends, that hundreds of millions of dollars of advertising have planted that in your brain. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is the anything that your family, anything that your mom did in the house when you were growing up, and anything your grandparents did in the house growing up. We have this thing that's evolutionary conserved in us that becomes our heritage, becomes our culture. And so then we believe, oh, that's how it's done. Because part of a parent and a grandparent's job is to teach you, do these things and your life will be better. Do these things and your life will be worse. This is something humans, a tool that we've used, a mental tool forever, for millennia. But the corporations have hijacked that. Not only have they hijacked our satiety hormones, they've hijacked our culture and our heritage. And so there's a whole, really 2 generations running around out there as adults who believe that Lucky Charms is part of their heritage, part of their culture. And that's what, so we get this generational damage being done. Not only did I eat this when I was growing up, and I ate it when I was pregnant with you, and then I fed it to you as when you were a young child. And so you get the epigenetic switches flipped there as well, right? And now you are an adult and you're about to have a child, and you believe in your heart of hearts, deep inside, that that's part of your heritage, part of your family culture, when it's literally been hijacked by the multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations. You are damaging your own progeny. You're damaging your own children and grandchildren by feeding this inflammatory, insulin spiking, sugar spiking, potentially ADHD causing, potentially cancer causing crap. And the corporations are making out like bandits.
Well, they are, and thank you for that whole the heritage part, because these things get set in stone early. Listen, kids are defenseless. The kid in the candy aisle, right? The 3-year-old at the checkout line throwing the tantrum, right? So the kids aren't supposed to be the senior adults in this story. But then we get to the actual senior adults. And Ken, take a look at this. I just went to a random standard. This is just from a school district. You see, I pulled it down. It was printed out on September 17th, 2024. It's down there at the bottom. But let's look at this. Tuesday, strawberry Pop-Tarts. Wednesday, apple cinnamon benefit bars. Thursday, Pillsbury mini cinnamon caramel rolls. Friday, Crunch Mania graham snacks. Looks like that picture down below. And District 5 down here in March celebrated National School Breakfast Week. They spread out all the stuff out there. Look how exciting that display is down in that picture there. I mean, Ken, this is going on in schools
every school
over the country.
Every school, every preschool, every hospital, every prison, every nursing home. So let's talk about that. Keep that image up. Why in the world would a school be doing this? So there's multiple reasons again, and we have to fight all these reasons at every level. First of all, it's easy for the cafeteria staff to do this. There's no cooking. You don't have to slave over a hot cauldron of whatever. You just grab this and put it on a tray. You're done. What about school administration? Why did they allow this? They actually are mandated federally to feed this kind of crap to kids because this stuff that you see in this picture and on the school menu, this meets the USDA criteria. And so I can tell you a quick story. We have a very small school here in our community where the cafeteria ladies, once a week, they would actually fix a real breakfast for the kids, bacon and eggs and biscuits and gravy, real breakfast, right? And some parent, meaning well, I'm sure, actually reported this. And the principal, who was a personal friend of mine, got a letter from the federal government saying, hey, if you keep doing this, you're going to lose all of your federal dollars. This does not meet our criteria. And so these well-meaning cafeteria ladies who love these children, who love this community and said, hey, I want to fix you bacon and eggs for breakfast, they almost lost their federal funding because they were doing this, and they had to step away from what any rational adult would say, well, it's a good thing they're doing that. They had to cease and desist, or they would have lost hundreds of thousands in federal dollars because they were not meeting the guidelines. Now, look at all those packages in the picture. Who's benefiting from that? Not the children, not the community, the corporations who sell that crap. That's who's benefiting from this. They have captured the federal guidelines because here's the truth of this. Chris and I, we don't have any lobbyists that lobby congressmen or senators. Right? We don't have any lobbyists. You don't have any lobbyists at all. You can't afford one. I promise you can't afford one. But these big food companies, they have on average 1 to 5 lobbyists for each and every congressman and senator to lobby them to make sure this stuff gets into I'm not even going to call it stuff. This crap gets into the guidelines and stays into the guidelines. The same goes for the SNAP program that used to be called food stamps. They've hijacked that. Same goes for the WIC program, Women's Infants and Children, women who are pregnant, expecting, breastfeeding, or have young infants in their house. Do you know you can't even buy red meat with WIC benefits, but you can buy all the cereal that you want with those benefits, SNAP benefits. What 11% of that goes just for Coke and Pepsi and Mountain Dew.
Wow.
11% and so now we're faced with, well, do we mandate you can't buy that stuff, or do we try to educate people who are on the SNAP program and the WIC program? No, don't get that stuff. The corporations have got us in a dilemma, Chris. This is not a problem that has an easy solution. This is a dilemma where your choices are worse, bad, less bad, slightly less bad. It's going to take a decade to unravel all the damage that's been done by the food corporations and their lobbyists and the limp-wristed senators and congressmen who have been like, well, it's just a little move in the wrong direction. It's not a big deal. They're going to give me $5,000 for my campaign. I guess I'll vote yes on this. And so it's this slow, slippery slope from going from feeding your kids real food and it not even being questioned that you feed children real human food. That shouldn't even be questioned, right? And now we find ourselves in 2024 in this position where I'm having to argue online daily with people. This is not even food. If you brought motor oil and antifreeze to school and said, hey, let's feed this to the kids, people would have a problem with that. But what we're effectively doing is just feeding another variant of motor oil and antifreeze to the kids. And then people are getting up in arms saying, don't you take Lucky Charms away from the children. It's maddening that we've gotten to where we are. And that's why there's so much confusion and so much argument is the food corporations have intentionally muddied the water because they took their playbook from big tobacco. Remember when the tobacco companies would be like, well, we're not even sure if nicotine's really addictive, but there's no evidence that proves that smoking it causes cancer. This is just observational data. That's where we find ourselves. And it's maddening, but yet any rational adult, any adult who loves their children and loves other people's children that they've never met and wants a better future for humanity, this has got to stop. It's got to stop, and we've got to be part of the solution. As as big of a headache as it is to try to argue common sense and logic with some of those people out there, it has to be done because that's the only way we're going to save the kids from being fed this diabetes invoking, inflammatory, ADH provoking, cancer provoking junk.
Well, it just brings us back to this all the time. And so, Ken, if we were going to move the United States from its current, just under 79 years of life expectancy up to, say, Japan's at 84, well, we're talking 5 years across 330 million people. This is an average. So that's like 1.5 billion person years. That's 1.5 billion grandpa years with their grandchildren.
Yes.
It's a big deal.
And this doesn't even take into account, Chris, the health span of these
spending, the quality of life. I'm just talking quantity. Right. You're right, quality.
Right. This is just quantity. We're losing billions of years of wisdom from our grandfathers and our grandmothers, and God forbid, even our great-grandfathers and great-grandmothers. Humans used to know these older people are a source of wisdom. They can teach you things. But now we just want to put them in nursing homes. And when you wind up putting somebody in a nursing home, a lot of people, they've never said it out loud, but it doesn't really matter whether they live a year or 15 years in there. So if they died, nothing was really lost. That's terrible. That we may not say that out loud. We may not believe that consciously, but that's what is effectively happening in the United States right now. So the grandparents are losing 10 years of healthy life that they could be outside in the backyard kicking the soccer ball with their grandkids, teaching them life lessons. We don't get that from our grandparents anymore. And then they're dying 5 years sooner than other developed countries. This has got to stop. This is ridiculous. It makes you wonder why the 20-somethings and the 30-somethings of today believe the moronic things that they believe and espouse the idiotic positions that they espouse. It's because they didn't have any quality time with older people, their grandparents, who would say, no, honey, that's dumb. No, don't. That's not right at all.
Yeah.
Kids are hardwired to believe their parents, and they're hardwired to believe their grandparents. We're hardwired. Even if you don't want to believe them, you still believe them. Kids don't have that these days. All they have is the cartoons that are sponsored by the big food companies. They have the websites that are sponsored by the big food companies. And then they go to school and they eat the food that's sponsored by the big food companies. That literally, the big food companies have more input on what your child believes than you do as a parent or a grandparent. It's time for that to stop.
Indeed. And so, this is a complicated topic. I'm learning a lot about it as we go. So as you know, Ken, I value truth. And not that there is a capital T truth and you ever find it. It's kind of like if you're refining gold, you get it to 70% and then 80, then 90, then 99, then 99.9. It's a process. And so I'm uncovering a lot of truths here. And I think people are waking up to this. There's a great awakening going on. So you and I, we've teamed up because I think we're built just the same, like integrity matters. We want to help people. And we're going to be putting on a food webinar to help begin to decode all of this for people. Just save time and help people get started and get on the healthy path. And I honestly think there, two big groups of people. Obviously, the mama bears, typically the moms, they just don't want to get their kids started out on the wrong foot. What parent does? this is a big thing to figure out that your whole school system has conspired to feed your kid stuff that's easy for them, bad for your kid, and that's not the deal. And secondarily, there are people like you and I who know that there's a really important period of time coming up and we want to be in the game. And it's almost like these food companies, the pharma companies, the sick care industry wants us out of the game. So I'm stubborn. You want me out of the game? I'm in the game. It's how I'm built. So Ken,
Absolutely.
I'm just going to take a quick break and let people know more about that food webinar. I'm going to be my own sponsor here for this particular pro. We'll be back in about 3 minutes, and we're going to carry on with what some of those lobbying efforts are. And then I will still, for everybody else, we're going to carry on and talk about the continuing resolution and a few other things that we have to get to. Are you tired of feeling run down, maybe low energy? You know you've got some pounds you'd like to lose. Maybe you've got brain fog or something like that. Listen, we think we have the answer to all of that, and it begins with your food. If you're like me, you were shocked to hear testimony recently that unraveled and unearthed and exposed the idea that our food has been made addictive by addiction specialist scientists, the tobacco scientists out there putting things in our food. Maybe it also shocked you to discover that Europe does not allow all kinds of stuff in our food because they know it's toxic. What is the combined effect of all of this? Listen, we know what the data is. It's horrifying. The number of children showing up with type 2 diabetes, the total metabolic disasters unfolding across the land, marked by obesity, sure, but we have cardiovascular issues, concomitant rises in cancers, all of these things, and it all starts with food. Garbage in, garbage out. So what do we do about that? First, it begins with understanding the context. We've put together a very exciting, comprehensive food webinar that will expose the regulatory side of this and what is being done and why and how this happened to us. We'll be talking with Thomas Massey about that. We've got Dr. Ken Berry talking with us on the practitioner side and the solution side. We've got Tracy Thurman talking to us about the war on farmers and the war on food that has been happening. And Robert Barnes to help us to understand that as well. Many, many other guests to both define what the problem is and what we can do about it. And we want to make it as simple as possible. Here's an example. Tortillas. Hey, maybe you're even on keto and these are carb-wise. So these have low amounts of carbs. See that? Carb-wise. Yeah, these are carb-wise, so keto-friendly. I want to note something. You see how fresh these look? Yeah? You see any mold in there? Any bacteria, any yeast, any sign of anything, any organism in there? These things expired in June and it is now November. So, what are they putting in our food that even black mold won't eat it? I don't know, but I've decided that if it's not good enough for black mold, it's no longer good enough for me. Once you start down that path, you realize that we have got sugar and preservatives and salt and seed oils, all of the chemicals that are unnecessary, and the fact that the food pyramid is absolutely wrong. So if you like effective information that leads to effective action, this webinar is for you. It's going to be the usual thing that my team and I will put on. It'll be organized, digestible, easily understandable, and most importantly, it's going to be actionable in ways that you will understand what to do. And I've designed it so that you would easily be able to send this to anybody that you love or care about, say, can we talk about this, and have it as a starting point for conversation. But what we really want, we want you to be healthy because, well, who doesn't want to be healthy? Health is the number one form of personal capital you can have, of course. But given everything that's going on in the world, being healthy and vigorous and active are going to be dominant strategies and things you're really going to want to be carrying in. So, folks, it's time to get prepared on all levels. It begins here. It starts at home. It begins with our eating. And let's just make sure that we're not eating stuff that even black mold won't touch. With that, thank you very much for listening, and we'll get back to our regular programming now. Bye-bye. Hey, welcome back to the regular programming. It's me again. Listen, I'm actually really excited for this food webinar and this content. I just want people to be healthy. You know, I did everything I could during COVID to alert people to what was going on. I like to be helpful, right? We have the Great Taking series. We investigated the Trump assassination attempt on July 13th. This is what I do. I try and find information that I think is going to be really helpful to people. So Ken, can I just show you some stuff now that I want to talk about what we're up against. So I feel good that maybe, RFK Jr. is going to come in and try and do something. We've got a new head of FDA, which I think, is going to be a good selection, assuming they get confirmed. Things are possible, but you know what? Truth doesn't matter when you get to Washington. It's politics and it's money and it's crazy trade-offs. So to that end, let me show you this real quick. I got a couple things here. First, really great piece here by Li Fang talking about what the junk food lobby, and yes, it's a lobby, what they're going to do here to derail RFK's agenda should he get confirmed. And so Real Clear Investigations quote here has learned that representatives of companies that make snack foods, sugary beverages, cooking oils are already meeting, of course, to discuss how to thwart the reform agenda of RFK Jr. Okay. So that's what they want to do. It's going to be a massive effort by DC lobbyists, it says here, to position their clients in response to Trump's pledge to change how Washington does business. So the lobbyists, Ken, they're there to protect corporate profits. That's what they're there for. Yeah. And so look at this. Tartrazine, so-called yellow dye 5, right? It said in videos that have gone viral this year, Kennedy, and you saw a screenshot of that up 2 slides ago. He singled out ultra-processed food as a priority in one video devoted to the potential dangers of yellow 5 food dye. He stands with a table of Dorito chips and Captain Crunch cereal. Carrying on down below in yellow, the dye, also known as tartrazine, has been linked to behavioral problems in children and other health risks. The European Union requires child warning labels for products with tartrazine. This is the stuff, you see the molecular formulation right there. But Ken, I'm hungry. I think I'm going to go to the kitchen and make myself a big plate of trisodium 1,4-sulfonyl-phenyl 4-sulfonophenylazetyl 5-pyrrolazone 3-carboxylate. Yep. How about you? You down for a big? Want me to go make a plate of that up right now?
Fact check me if I'm wrong about this, Chris, but I'm almost certain that is a byproduct of petroleum chemical manufacturing. I think that's where it's a petroleum byproduct, but double check me on that. So I can guarantee you, because I'm a student of human nature, just like you are, Chris, every boardroom of every big food corporation is a buzz right now. They're having meetings. They're having get your heads together groups. They're sending out mass emails, back channel Slack messages saying, hey, what are we going to do about this? What's the plan? And they'll have a plan on day one. Come January 20th, they will have a plan and they will put that plan into action. Maybe they'll say, well, we'll add a little more plant fiber so it's higher in fiber. We'll add a little more plant protein so it's higher in protein. We'll take out, and they'll compromise, because that's what government does. They'll compromise. They'll say, well, we'll take out the tartrazine, but let's leave the others in. There's not nearly as much data about them. We don't want the price of food to go up too much. And if you guys make us take all this out, it's going to increase the price of a box of cereal 45 cents a box or something. And you don't want hungry people to not be able to afford food. And I keep doing air quotes because this is not my definition of food, right?
Yeah.
And they'll make these deals, and the reps and the senators will wind up compromising. They'll make the breakfast cereal a little less bad. But in the common sense world, less bad does not equal good. And so that's why I'm doing this with you. That's why I make my YouTube videos, is because I have no faith in the federal government, Chris. I don't know if that shocks you for me to say that. Even this incoming administration, I think many of them have great intentions. I have personal interactions with several of them. I've DM'd with RFK Jr. I've had Marty McCary interviewed him on my channel. I've had several other people who are being vetted. One of my good friends just went to Mar-a-Lago for a position with the VA Medical Center. I love these people. I have great hope for these people, but I know that they are going into the belly of the beast, and the beast is famous for chewing the guts out of people like this and sending them home with some scandal. Oh, we found out that back in 1979, this guy had a little marital indiscretion, or we found out this guy had a little drug problem or alcohol problem, or we found out that this guy, whatever. And these people, many of these people, I predict, will be sent home prematurely before they've had a chance to do any good because they discovered a skeleton in their closet. Do you not think Big Food, how many private investigators do you think Big Food has right now looking into every one of these? How many public relations firms do you think are coming up with campaigns right now to dilute the effect of these people who are going to Washington with the best of intentions and with big plans? How many do you think will be sent home because we found a skeleton or because this PR firm just destroyed their reputation? This is going to happen. And that's why I reach out daily to regular folks and say, hey, you cannot trust the federal government. Even with this new administration, you cannot trust the federal government. Let's look at the science. Let's look at modern nutrition science. Let's look at archaeology, anthropology, paleoanthropology. Let's figure out what is a proper human diet. And then, God forbid, feed that to your family. And it does not include things that black mold will not eat.
Now, thank you for putting it this way. And again, I don't trust the government either, or rather I do. I trust that it's going to have to fight these vicious fights, which a normal person for you and I, we should never have to fight that fight. So, quick example here. So imagine if raw milk did any of these things. This is tartrazine we're just talking about, right? This yellow dye. It causes skin reactions, hives, urticaria, angioedema, eczemas, gastrointestinal issues, respiratory issues, central nervous system issues, anxieties, migraine, depression, blurred vision, other reactions, all this. And it may be mutagenic too, but hey, whatever, right? Oh my God, are you kidding me?
Yep.
So that's what it does. And there are people, Ken, what you're saying, they're going to fight taking that out because it's going to cost them an extra half a penny a box, and they'll tell us it's 45 cents more, and think of all the starving kids. But look at this. I always love it when you can put pizza and Podesta somewhere in the same sentence. But this is from that same article before from Lee Fang. It says, under sway from industry sources, the House Appropriations Committee inserted a provision into federal funding that forced tomato paste on frozen pizzas to be counted as a vegetable. So therefore, pizza is a vegetable under federal dietary guidelines. Yep. At any rate, it turns out that this Invariant is a lobbying group. Invariant is a group that actually it's founded by somebody named Heather Podesta, which raises my hackles right away. I'm like, oh yeah, yep, that Podesta, that one. Great taste in art, and also helping you decide what good food is. That's what we're up against. That system right there. So I don't know.
I would be happy not to take any health or nutrition advice from any of the Podesta family. I'm not interested in their advice.
Correct. Yes. That would be really appropriate. And and so we just we're watching let me show you this real quick. Bernie Sanders has been, now he's finally found his mojo again, and here he is. He's grilling Caliph. I could play this, but it's a long thing. But Sanders said, what? I'm not hearing you. What? Why are our kids unhealthy? Can you explain? Are you prepared to tell us this committee of Congress needs to take on the food and beverage industry? And Caliph says, well, I'm not going to castigate the people that work in the food and beverage industry, right? You're not? No, it's your job, dude, right? Anyway, and he goes into this long thing about how it takes years and years to figure this stuff out, Ken. It's just going to take forever, and they're going to fight us every step of the way. That's going to be happening, which is why everybody here needs to learn how to take matters into their own hands. It'll be another 14 years before they make some progress on some of this stuff. That's Washington. Like it or not, that's the process.
Yeah, the big food companies, all they want to do, all they have to do to win, Chris, is to slow this process down. That's all they have to do. They slow the process down, and they introduce uncertainty into the equation. That's the tobacco playbook. They're going to use the same playbook. That's exactly what they're going to do, because the average person, when they find out the truth about how much we've been lied to about food, about nutrition, about medicine, they are pissed off. They are on fire. They are motivated. They're going to change the world. I've seen so many doctors come and go on YouTube when they find this out. They're like, oh my God, I've got to tell the world. And they're really on fire for a year or two. And then they're like, I'm not having any effects. So they
This
just
is
go about their
hard.
business. This is hard and it takes a long time. Exactly. Now, do you think the corporations, do they care if it takes 5, 10, 15, 20 years to win this battle? No, that's actually a benefit to them because corporations are essentially immortal. They don't have families. They don't have things they have to do. Their one and only job is to win this fight, to drag this out, to muddy the water, and till finally enough people like you and me just get discouraged and be like, yeah, I could actually do better over here doing something else. And so you move on with your life. Well, corporations they're immortal. They don't have a life to worry about. They don't care if it takes 10 years to win this. They're going to win this. And that's why I stopped worrying about what the federal government does. I have a good friend, Nina Teicholz, who wrote a book called The Big Fat Surprise about how saturated fat's not bad for you. And she made it her mission in life to change the federal guidelines. And I was like, good luck to you, honey. I wish you all the luck, but I think you're going to have zero success. And she's been bashing her head against that wall for 10 years. This new administration has reached out to her, and there's hope again, once again, hope. But I don't hang my hat on hope. I hang my hat on common sense and actionable, easy steps that just real people can take with their very next meal. You can change the following things and start to immediately improve your health. That's why I started the YouTube channel, to reach just real folks and say, hey, ignore all this stuff. Just do the following things and your health will start to immediately improve. And that seems to be working for me.
Well, great. And Eric Patton here, and I'll let you go soon, Ken. He said, quote, the government has set up a system to keep us sick and poor. We need to stop their agenda somehow. Well, yeah. Eric, it's going to be a big, nasty, dirty fight in Washington. It's going to take a long time. That's the bad news. The good news is Ken can help you figure that out right away.
And what I would say is
just start, right?
Let me talk to Eric. Eric, don't worry about any of what you just tweeted. Don't worry about that, what you just posted. Fix your own health first. Follow the simple steps, the simple principles of a proper human diet. Fix your own health, okay? It's going to make you healthier, and it's going to make you mentally healthier and happier. It's going to make you give off this exuberance, this almost like an inner glow. Your friends and your family members will see that in you, and they're going to say, Eric, dude, you look great. What are you doing? You seem so much happier. When they ask you that question, then you teach them the principles of a proper human diet. To the degree to which they listen to you and implement the simple principles, their health will start to improve. And then you start this cascade effect of where they start to tell their friends and so on and so on. That's the way I'm going to try to change the world. I have no hope that we're going to have, I literally have no hope that we're going to have any effect at the federal level. I have very little hope we'll have any effect at the state level. I'm talking to several state senators and state reps here in Tennessee saying, hey, let me come and talk to somebody. Let me teach them what's going on, why our kids are so sick, so fat, so diabetic, why our kids have fatty liver disease, which shouldn't even exist in children. I have no hope. The only hope I have is that Eric can affect his immediate family, and then he can affect his friends, and then he can affect his extended family and his extended friend network. That's the only hope we have for saving each other, is to help each other along this journey. I have no hope at the federal level.
Indeed. Well, Ken, thank you so much for your time today here on the Signal Hour. Tell people where they can find you, and because I know Eric's going to want to hunt you down.
Eric, I have a YouTube channel. If you just go to YouTube and type in Dr. Berry, you will find my YouTube channel. I have 3.4 million followers now. I have over 1,500 videos. If you have a medical condition, Eric, you can go to YouTube and type in Dr. Berry and whatever your medical condition is. I probably have one, if not multiple videos about how you can reverse that or at least improve your symptoms. If I'm feeling particularly snarky, you can find me on Twitter, now X. I just retweeted Bernie Sanders' tweet, and I said, hey, it's rare that I agree with Senator Sanders, but in this case, I 100% agree with him. I have no problem reaching across the aisle, reaching across and saying, yes, my enemy on this particular topic is exactly correct. If I'm feeling loving and caring, you'll find me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm also on Noster, which I've talked to Chris about before, which is a decentralized platform where you can never be canceled. So if you'd like to make it impossible for the big corporations to ever cancel you, check out Noster, Nostr. I make no money from recommending that. Thank you, Chris, for having me on. I love the work you're doing. I've been a member of Chris's Peak Prosperity group for years and have reached out to Chris for years saying, dude, we need to talk about this. But he was busy with other stuff, which I totally understand. But now that food is on his radar, now that nutrition and health is on his radar, you can damn well bet I'm going to make hay.
Absolutely. And as I like to say, Ken, I'm a quick learner. Eventually, took me time to catch up to you.
Same.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ken Berry. We're going to carry this conversation and, of course, see you on the food webinar coming up in early January. All right, buddy. Thank you. Thanks for your time today.
Later.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. We are going to move on now to, Ken's awesome. I love working with that guy. And people like him. So this is the great movement, is now people who are sick and tired of being sick and tired. We're tired of being gaslit. So let's talk about all the ways we've been gaslit of late, right? So Trump wins the election. Then that's November 5th. By November 6th, the dust settles a little. Next thing you know, the U.S. is launching long-range missiles into Russia and trying to get World War III started. And then, there's a little case of overthrowing the Romanian elections. I'm sure we had a little hand in that. And then, Syria falls, and on and on and on. There have been all these provocations, and then the drones. Now, look, if you haven't heard my views on this so far, very simply, obviously, when the government comes out and says, we have no idea what these things are, where they're coming from, or where they're going, but they're not a threat. That's 2 lies or 3 lies or however many lies you want to see all at once. Obviously, the government knows what they are and where they came from. That's obvious, right? To anybody who knows even minimal things about air corridors, air traffic, the ability of the United States government to track stuff in the air. It's pretty good. Except on 9/11, different story. But when we look at this overall story, it's obvious that this just has the feel of another psy-op. Now, I'm going to be releasing soon. I interviewed Robert Malone about psy wars and psyops, 5th generation warfare. Unfortunately, that's the landscape we're in. But this is important to understand because that's the world we're in right now, which is that information is the new battlefield. And, if you're worried about misinformation, malinformation, disinformation as a government flunky, and we'll talk about that in the continuing resolution. They're working hard to keep that whole ship going. It's even easier if you don't have misinformation or disinformation, because the person who's trying to exercise that free speech actually has had their mind co-opted, and they don't even have free thought. They're not even thinking anything unapproved, right? That's the game. So let's talk about that very quickly as we move on. This continuing resolution, right? As I said, it's like watching sausage being made from roadkill that would actually be more appetizing than that. So let's talk about this 2025 Christmas tree bill. Here's Representative Mace filling us in, Nancy Mace. Oh, hold on. Something's not. Oh, operator error. Here we go.
Actually cut spending. This is what DC does. They manufacture a crisis. No government shutdown. They manufacture this crisis to get as much stuff into this bill. We call it a Christmas tree bill because everybody gets something and then more, and you get stuck with the tab, and makes things so much less affordable for you, the American people.
Yep. That's it. The Christmas tree bill. So what does that mean? Well, it's a 1,547-page continuing resolution to keep funding the central government, which, by the way, could have fit on a single sheet of paper, which says the government shall continue funding at current levels through March. I mean, that would have continued it. But instead, it's a 1,547-page thing. Oh, by the way, Congress in here managed to also give itself a pay raise and opt itself out of Obamacare. Rules for thee, not for me. It's a monster of a monstrosity. This is the monster. That's literally what it looks like, all printed out there. And that would land on your desk with just hours to read it if you were in Congress. before you'd have to vote on it. And by the way, you couldn't possibly read it. I mean, you would need like the latest, greatest AI to begin to unravel this. Why? Let's go to page 957. And this is what a page looks like in there. Redesignation, Section 3 of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which is 29 USC 3102, which you'd have to go dig that puppy out. And then you would have to understand that this continuing resolution is further amended by redesignating paragraphs 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 14, blah, 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 respectively. How you can't even, like, who even writes this stuff? I mean, this is sausage made out of roadkill. This is unbelievable that anybody could even, like, I wouldn't even begin to know. It would take training to even begin to understand what this is. And obviously you had some subgroup of people working on the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And I guarantee you most of those numbers in parens is another corrupt scam so that Washington insiders and their corrupt hangers on, the leeches in this story, can continue being who they are. And somehow this is just a big old dead giveaway. Now, I don't think anybody does a better job of sort of laying all this out. So this is Representative Massey. And by the way, I did interview him for the food webinar. I really like this guy a lot. This is what he said back on September 9th, 2024. We don't have to listen to the whole thing, but his first few minutes, boy, does he nail it. Folks, if you want to know why inflation is high, it's because your government is overspending. If you want to know why it's overspending, it's because of what Thomas is about to clue us into here.
And I would call in Mr. Massey.
Can we be honest with the American people about what's going on here? This is political theater. I'm going to call out both sides right here. It's all posturing. It's fake fighting. We all know where it ends up. This is Groundhog Day. I don't care if the Democrat is the speaker or Republican is the speaker. We always get a CR in September, and then we get an omnibus. Sometimes there's a twist on that. We might get the omnibus before Christmas, but if we're not good, it comes after Christmas. But that's what's going to happen. And in the meantime, it's political theater. You know, we've got it's good theater. We've got great writers. I wish they'd just come up with a new plot. It's the same plot every fiscal year. What should we be doing? It's already been discussed. We should have done 12 separate bills.
Mm-hmm.
We should have done 12 separate bills. But again, whether Democrats are in control or Republicans are in control, we never do the 12 separate bills. Why do we always spend at least as much as we did last year, and why do we never cut spending? It's because Democrats want to grow the welfare state and Republicans want to grow the military industrial complex. And we're eventually going to get together and they're both going to go up. I guarantee it. And both parties are just fine letting the bureaucrats do their thing, which should be our thing, according to Article 1, Section 8 in the Constitution. We are empowered with these things. Most important of the things we do is the funding, and that's the big lever we have. You know, I've sat through now almost 2 years of hearings in this Congress where we've exposed lies at the CDC, shortcuts at the FDA, unconstitutional gun bans at the ATF, over prosecution of January 6ers at the DOJ, targeting common citizens at the FBI, spying by the NSA, illegal mandates for livestock by the USDA, targeting plant vaccine or transgenic plant vaccine at the NSF, and censorship, the censorship industrial complex at the end of which the NSF is part of, automobile kill switch at the DOT. Now, these are all things I think most Democrats are just fine with, this kind of totalitarian state that the bureaucrats are pushing on us. But Republicans at least pretend to be against these things. But what are we going to do this September? We're going to fund every freaking one of those things that we have exposed. That is the tool that we have, is the funding. Why are we funding things we don't like? We don't have to. Well, it's because we're addicted to spending. And this doesn't do anything about the addiction at all. So,
all right. How good is that? That was just like the most eloquent couple of minutes just to lay the whole charade out, the whole thing. I mean, that's absolutely Representative Massey has just nailed it here, obviously. And so this leads to a number of issues that we're going to have to face, and I'll be doing more episodes in the future about trying to understand the actual fiscal and monetary situation or predicament, more accurately, that we find ourselves in as a nation. We're overspending badly. Nobody seems to know how to stop that train. And the only thing government ever does is just ratchet up higher, more spending. That's easy. Ratchet. COVID, they ratcheted spending up by $2 trillion. Now it's stuck there. Nobody can figure out how to get 500 billion back, right? Vivek and Elon, like, we can save 500 billion. Oh, the gnashing of teeth, the pulling of hair, the worst thing ever. This is going to destroy the world. To just try and get our spending back to where it was in 2023 would be a destructive Washington, D.C. destructive event. It would be a seismic problem. Again, back to Representative Nancy Mace saying the first 9 pages of this continuing resolution are all we need to keep the government open. The other 1,500 pages are a handbook on how the government plans to waste your tax dollars for a bit. Oh, yeah. By the way, we're at the top of the signal hour. I'm going to keep going for just a little bit here because I got some more stuff to cover because this is just that important. So we're going to run a little long today, if that's okay. All right. If it's not, you just navigate away. You're the boss. Check this out from Amuse on X. Continuing resolution prevents Trump's DOJ from investigating Congress. They have buried in this 1,500-page monstrosity. It says here, a court of competent jurisdiction shall quash or modify any legal process directed to the provider for a House office if compliance with the legal process would require the disclosure of House data of the House office. It's like anything that would require me to, like, tell you what I did, we're going to have to quash that right away. What does this have to do with a continuing resolution to fund the government? That's his one. When Thomas Massey said there should be 12 separate bills, that ought to be its own bill. That ought to be its own bill on about 2 or 3 pages with names on it. I'm the sponsor. You're the co-sponsor. These are the people who voted for it, because it ought to be out there in the bright light of day. Now, you know what's going to happen. They're going to say, oh, anybody who didn't vote for this continuing resolution and all of these sub-acts that came along for the ride like leeches, then you must be for shutting down the government, and therefore we're going to have to close the Park Service. And a lot of people are going to go home very unhappy, not able to attend, get into Yellowstone, right? That's how they roll, right? When the federal government has to shut down, they act like a PTA school board that didn't get everything they want. They shut down the most valuable high impact programs. After school sports, that's what we have to do. We're not going to, like, fire the assistant dean of diversity within the school district, to save money. Like, no. They're going to make it as painful as possible. But at any rate, this is just corruption protecting itself from itself. That's one thing. As well, Benjamin Weingarten pointing out here that there's a key part in here that's going to extend the censorship industrial complex, right? Which is going to make sure the Global Engagement Center, which is the thing that's been shutting down all of the free speech and is very anti-American. And they just did that by inserting this deep into this whole continuing resolution, which is Section 1287J of the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, for fiscal year 2017, is amended by striking on the date that is 8 years after the date of enactment of this act, which is 2017 plus 8, 2025, and inserting on the date is 9 years after the date of enactment of this act. So the NDAA is this big, nasty, authoritarian crap show of an act. And here in the continuing resolution, they're sneaking in something to amend that. So it's amending a law from within another law, in this case, an appropriations bill, to amend a law that has nothing to do strictly with appropriations. But this is how they roll. The omnibus thing, and this is what Thomas Massey talked about, it's kabuki theater. You're going to have this continuing resolution that's sort of going to get skated along, and then eventually it turns into omnibus. That's what that means. Omni, comprehensive omnibus. It's like there's all kinds of things tucked and hidden inside this 1,547-page continuing resolution. It's not a continuing resolution. It is an omnibus spending and legislative rewrite act. It's like the Christmas tree act all thrown into one spot. And then you have to either vote on the whole thing or you have to vote against the whole thing. And if you vote against it, well, then you're a evil Nazi racist who wants to shut down the government. And think of all the starving women and children because the school WICS program won't, food lunch programs won't get funded. Instead, or you have to vote for all this stuff. So if you are somebody who's of a mind to say, I'm not for this, I'm not for carrying on with this global engagement center. This thing was absolutely unconstitutional. I don't believe in it. It hasn't been good for the country. It hasn't made us safer and has helped people actually have less trust in the government. This thing undermines the security and faith in our government. So I'm not for it. But you have to vote for it because there it is, somehow magically tucked in here, the Global Engagement Center extension. What a piece of junk. How about this? The continuing resolution expands the government's emergency powers, allowing it to bring back those good all-time crowd pleasers, vaccine and mask mandates, create vaccine passports, even funding gain-of-function research, because that went so swimmingly well that last time. So at any rate, any stupid, idiotic idea, any pork barrel, any graft, any corruption, this is now all just like wrapped in these things they call continuing resolutions. And of course, if you have good times leading to weak men, those weak men eventually end up in the middle of a Newsmax thing and they get sandwiched between an old guy and a blonde. And that weak man would be Mike Johnson, who's he's just shrugging, he's whining here. He's like, well, no one wants to spend 110 billion on pork, but what are you going to do? Oh, by the way, congressional representatives are going to receive a pay raise. They did get that tucked into this as well. So that's the continuing resolution. It's actually a big deal. It shows just how defective and dysfunctional our government has become over time, that it doesn't know any other way to operate except to slam out these 1,500-page things, heave them over at the last minute, and it's full of gobbledygook, pork, bad ideas, corruption, and wasteful spending. Carrying on, Team Biden is kind of insisting, and along with the DNC, along with Rhino Republicans, they're pretty clear about this. America and Americans come last. This gentleman, if you haven't seen this yet, made the circuits last week. He did just a spectacular job of sort of explaining when and why and how he lost touch with his former party of choice, the Democrats.
This was the precise moment I no longer was a Democrat.
Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants. Okay.
That was the precise moment that I knew I was leaving the Democratic Party, because I was a 2-time bone cancer survivor. I voted for Obama-Biden based on Obamacare. And when it was implemented in 2010, I ended up losing my insurance. I went from an insurance plan that was $185 a month with a $1,000 deductible to that policy being canceled because it no longer met the requirements of Obamacare. And I was left with the cheapest option being $1,200 a month, $6,000 deductible. $185 a month, $1,000 deductible to $1,200 a month, $6,000 deductible. I went 10 years without insurance, and I was penalized each year because I could no longer afford insurance. And in 2016, every single Democrat candidate up on that debate stage raised their hand and said they would give illegals free health care. While me, as a 2-time bone cancer survivor, lost mine. Didn't have insurance for 10 years, and I was supposed to get CT scans, chest x-rays, and all these other tests done every 6 months to ensure my cancer didn't come back. And they wanted to give illegals free health care. That was the exact moment I was no longer a Democrat.
Well, there it is. And of course, that makes a lot of sense, right? You're a taxpayer, you're putting into the system, and then anytime you want to try and pull back from or withdraw from the system, get something back out, right? Because we're all in this together. It's just never there, right? So we talk about this at Peak Prosperity in terms of the easy, hard framework, right? Easy are the things that the oligarchs, deep state, ruling class elites want. Those things are easy. They just happen. Hard is something that typically results in better health or a better outcome, or in some way, the middle classes and lower classes sharing in the national abundance. Those are hard, right? So easy is red dye number 3 and yellow dye number 10, just getting on the schedule, and we just use them because that, I mean, what else are you going to do? Getting them off, that's going to be hard, right? 100 billion to Ukraine, easy. $1 billion to Africa for flooding victims, easy, right? Because most of that doesn't actually go to Africa. It just goes into pockets in the US, and they say it was African aid, right? Oh, look at these blankets we sent over there. Like, yeah, the money went from a server in Washington, D.C. to a server in New York and never went to Africa, but $1 billion for Africans. But money for people in Western North Carolina or Lahaina, that's hard. Oh, it's hard. Really hard. Oh, do we need to waste billions more on some, boondoggle, shipping arms to Israel or something like that? That's easy. Getting lead out of the water in Flint, Michigan. Now that's hard. It still hasn't happened, right? It's just, anyway, this is the easy hard framework. The stuff that they want, which is mostly graft and corruption, is easy. And the stuff you want is actually hard. You want verifiable elections, basically back to paper-based. That should be in the easy column. It's actually pretty cheap. It's how everybody else does it. We did it that way for centuries. There's nothing wrong with it. It's easy, but it's going to be hard. Oh, that's so hard. How would you get that done? Easy is getting these new unverifiable voting machines that deliver statistically impossible, not even improbable results from time to time. It's just the game it is. So once you understand the easy hard framework, just anything that's easy is the things that advance their power and control and money, wealth. Those things are easy. They happen. Hard are the opposites of those things that improve your freedom, give you more prosperity, return something to you. That's hard. So that's what this gentleman figured out here, was that, if you are an illegal, undocumented migrant to the United States, it's easy. Here's a cell phone. Here's some money. We'll give you a plane ticket. You need some health care. You need a place to live. All of that's easy. If you are here already and you are a contributing member of this society, you get nothing. All right. That's the racket. It's what it's been for a long time. Now, as well, we look at America Last. Another way we can detect this is that, Biden, he just pardoned some of the most grotesque, unpardonable, unforgivable characters ever. A woman who embezzled $53 million from taxpayers. Pardoned. This gentleman right here, the Kids for Cash judge, this guy took a couple $1,000,000 to take kids under 18 and charge them with either they had something minor that he turned into something major, or maybe they were even innocent, didn't matter. Funneled them into a really nasty juvenile detention program that actually was so bad that in some cases it resulted in these kids committing suicide. This is heartbreaking right here.
You need to be. Do you remember me? Do you remember me? Do you remember my son? An all-star wrestler? He's good. He shot himself in the heart. You scumbag.
A heartbroken, really out.
That woman's son, all-star wrestler, ended up committing suicide after being pulled into this gentleman's Kids for Cash scheme. And Biden, that's the kind of person Biden wanted to pardon. Yep. It's frankly, it's unforgivable that this gentleman was pardoned. But of course, that's how the graft and corruption, that this is the kind of guy that Biden could, I think he wanted to, Team Biden said, this is our kind of guy. We would pardon this guy. This is the kind of guy, he does the kind of stuff that we think deserves a second chance. Maybe he'll hang some Podesta style art in his house someday and support a starving artist. Whatever the story is, it's gross. It's bad. I hope we can make it to January 20th without any other incidents. But these people, this is who they are. Remember, Maya Angelou said, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I got all the information I need on this whole thing. All right. And now we're going to turn to a couple of viewer questions and comments as we wrap this up here today. Vilnius from Lithuania writing, hi from Europe. Chris, the economic climate in Europe is getting gloomier. France has a political economic crisis that's going to be hard to solve. Hard and difficult. Yep. This makes another key European economy in bad straits. Germany continues to deindustrialize and lose jobs. Italy is in perpetual stagnation for many years. Typical. The only other larger economy, Poland, is doing relatively well, but Poland is not going to pull Europe out of the current quagmire. Oh, no, it is not. I see these trends only getting worse before things get better. Tariffs are not going to help Europe. Is there some light at the end of the tunnel? I certainly don't see any. The USA has cheap energy, lower regulation, a large internal market, and a new political order coming soon. In relative terms, be thankful. In relative terms, I am thankful. Europe has absolutely clubbed itself over the head a couple of times. Obviously, the whole technocracy of Brussels is very bad. Now, here's the one thing we know. Freedom begets prosperity. Regulations do not beget prosperity. And I understand that the people who like the regulation framework, which is a lot of technocrats in Europe, and unfortunately a very large number of municipal, state, local planning boards, zoning boards, health boards, regulatory apparatus at the federal levels, they do believe that more regulations are the path to happiness. They just unfortunately don't have any data to support that that's actually true past a certain level. I mean, the regulations I would support fit on a 3x5 card. They say you can do anything you want unless that impacts or in some way affects a neighbor of yours. Then you got to talk about it, right? But that would be basically it. So if I want to hire or fire people, or people don't want to work for me, or they do, that should be something I can deal with. If I want to put up a structure on my property, should be able to put up a structure on my property. That's how I'm built. I get it. Not everybody sees the world that way, but Europe is now past the point of recovery on this because they destroyed their energy system. And energy is the master resource. There's no other way around this. Germany is not going to be able to dig itself out with its energy VN, solar, wind. That stuff doesn't work. Shut down its nuclear. Bad idea. And they're persisting with their bad ideas. And they're going to keep doing that until the people who are promoting those bad ideas are removed from office. And that does not typically happen until some cratering function happens. So I'm looking for Europe to not just be a basket case compared to the US. I'm looking for Europe to actually shatter and break apart again, because Poland's not going to want to carry a bunch of dead wood around on its back because they can't. They're not big enough to do that. Germany is going to have to figure out all on its own that it cannot persist as a ward of the state, in this case, the EU. Its lifeblood is from good manufacturing and hardworking people making high value add products. That's prosperity. And that begins with only the necessary regulations, minimum, and then abundant and cheap energy. And then Rob Laporte asking here, biggest worry for the Trump team is that regime media will continue to deceive the 30 to 40% of U.S. citizens who get most of the news from those sources. I imagine one solution is that the new press secretary always has behind her in briefings a billboard that, one, lists all the major news sources that lied or seriously omitted on crucial matters and without retraction. Hey, I got a long list of those folks. I get fact checked by like NewsGuard and yada yada, the regime media sort of guard dogs. And of course, they never fact check themselves. And of course, when their fact checks turn out wrong, they never correct that. It's gross. I don't know how these people sleep at night, but it's a thing. 2, links to a web page proving the lies via a few major irrefutable cases. And 3, maybe, states that no questions citing evidence from those sources will be answered until retraction and apologies for the list is done. Yeah, I like that idea a lot. That way, all coverage of press briefings, educated citizens about ascertaining truth in news. I've also imagined that the new administration should subcontract to Chris' team to make and maintain the webpage and 2 above. What do you think of this idea? I think it's a great idea. Absolutely. We should become our own truth in media situations. So that's why I do what I do. That's what the Signal Hour is here for you about. It's we're going to try and find the truth within the noise. And mainstream media is not just noise at this point in time. They are running full-blown psychological operations. And these have been running long enough that the news media, I don't even think know they're even doing this anymore. I don't think there's anybody sitting there smoking cigars in a back room explaining exactly how CNN should like fake a news story about a Syrian prisoner of war. Nobody has to tell them how to do that. That's already baked in the cake because this system has been running for so long that the people within the system don't even know they're within the system. They actually believe their own lies and deceptions. And that's how far gone it is. And there's really no way I know about to sort of remedy that. You can't shame them into better behavior because they don't even know they have bad behavior. What do you do? Right? You got to start over. And so that's why I do what I do. And that's why lots of alternative media has been on the rise, is because we're just doing what we do, which is here's the truth as best we know it. We're going to present it to you. We'll give you maybe a little bit of color commentary, but mostly it's get you the facts you need so you can understand what's going on out there in the world. So that's all I have for this Signal Hour. I'm really enjoying these a lot. I look forward to them every week. Hope to see you back here next week, Wednesdays, 1 o'clock for the Signal Hour. I'm your host, Chris Martenson of Peak Prosperity. If you like this kind of coverage, I do this basically all week back at Peak Prosperity, especially and particularly for my members there. That's how I support what I do. And no, we don't take advertising. We have a few affiliate relationships we're proud of, but that's a win-win. Good companies, good people providing good products, but otherwise no advertising, no government money, no corporate money flowing in to influence what I say, what comes out of this mouth, obviously. So with that, thanks very much. We'll see you next week. I'm going to end the Signal Hour now, and we'll be back with you in a week.